All right.
Okay. How many of you think it would be cool if you were laying in your bed at night and one of those cannons went off next to your house and rattled your windows?
Lightning's done that before.
Yeah? How many of you think it would be cool if you were...
Uh-oh, somebody shot him dead.
We've got a fire on that. Go ahead with my talk, okay? How many of you think it would be cool if you were standing in a line shoulder to shoulder with other soldiers and you were facing an artillery barrage and one of those artillery barrages took one of your friends out? How many think that'd be cool?
Not too bad.
Artillery was a weapon of fear and intimidation in the mid-19th century. It was a symbol of power, and it was used by the Army to demonstrate their military might in the mid-19th century and the growing power of a developing country. They did have artillery here at Fort Scott in order to help the soldiers fulfill their military mission. And that mission was to protect what we call the permanent Indian frontier. When Fort Scott was first established in 1842, there was no state of Kansas. This was all Indian territory. Prior to that, most of the Indian tribes had been forced to move west, and when they got here, they were told this would be permanent Indian territory and that no white settlement would ever be allowed on Indian land. How did that promise work out? Worked out about as well as all the government's promises to the Indians, but that was the idea at the time. So in order to enforce
Smaller, but it's
So in order to enforce this idea of a permanent Indian territory, soldiers were stationed at a line of forts that ran from Fort Snelling up in what is now Minnesota down to Fort Jessup in Louisiana, with Fort Scott falling right about in the middle. There were two different kinds of soldiers stationed here: dragoons and infantry. I'm the only one dressed as a dragoon today. Dragoons were the horse soldiers of the time period. They were a specially trained unit trained to fight on horseback and on foot. The other type of soldier that was here at Fort Scott was the infantry. The infantry were the foot soldiers trained to fight and travel exclusively on foot. Just about every other soldier you see here today is dressed as an infantry soldier. There was a third type of soldier that was in the Army at that time that was not here at Fort Scott. Anybody know what type of soldier that would be? Yeah? Marines? Cavalry, dragoons were the forerunners for the cavalry. I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with the demonstration we're doing today.
Gunneries?
Was that they
gunneries.
were 400 batteries, but actually called artillery units.
Yeah.
Artillery soldiers. And artillery soldiers were primarily stationed at the coastal fortifications. So no professional artillerymen here, but the dragoons and infantry were trained to fire the artillery that was here. But because they were not professional artillerymen, they were given a nickname, jackass artilleryman.